Welcome to the Problem Properties podcast. I am your host, Catherine Veer, and every week we delve into the problems that properties have that are slightly less visible than the ordinary. So here we investigate any psychic activity that may be going on, any emotional imprints from previous owners that might still be layered into the walls and adding layers of toxicity to what you're living in. Or it might be that you have a property that cannot sell for love nor money nor any amount of refurbishing that you're doing. Whatever your problem is with your property, if you think that there might be something slightly under the bonnet going on that you are interested in finding out about, we look into and explore and are detectives on the more intuitive levels about what is going on and finding out the logical causes and being able to shift them for you. Welcome to the Problem Properties podcast. I am your host, Catherine Veer, and today in the hot seat I have the lovely Claire Bagehot, who lives in Wales, and Claire is a high performance coach. So welcome, massive big welcome to the Problem Properties podcast to Claire.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Pleasure to be here, and thank you with all your work on my property.
So we're going to come on to that in a moment, but just first of all, Claire, just wonder whether you would like to introduce yourself and say a little bit more about the people you work with and what you do for them.
Sure. So I basically bring people who are or have been high performance back into alignment, or into alignment in the first place. There may be things that have been out of alignment and they've gone into burnout, for example. They don't understand why. So they really step into their purpose and become really lit up and totally go out there and change people's lives.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Claire, as I mentioned, lives in Wales in an old cottage in deepest, darkest Wales. So Claire had this idea that there might be some things going on that I could look at with my capacity and skills as an intuitive property detective to see what was going on and see what we could clear for her in her property. So Claire, tell our lovely listeners here, what were some of the symptoms that you were experiencing before we did the clearing?
Okay, so lack of clarity. It was huge, almost like brain fog, but not really. It was almost like amnesia. The momentum, the inspiration, the motivation would go. I knew that I knew certain things. I could feel that they were there, but I couldn't access them. It felt to me like I lost my connection to spirit, to my guides, to my energy work, to my healing. It was a pretty horrible experience, to be honest. I went through grief. It's like losing someone that is the most important person to you. So losing part of you.
I guess it's probably interesting for people listening to think, well, you were experiencing this disconnection. What was the connection that you made in your mind between that and that might be something going on in the property that might be either responsible or somehow affecting that part of your capacity to connect?
It was more a feeling that grew, because when my gifts and abilities were really strong in places, in parts, and then they would go. So whereas other places, everything would be very constant, very consistent, this was coming in and out. And I just felt that wasn't quite right. There was more to it than me going through a certain stage in life, or me, I don't know, not drinking enough water. It was beyond things of my control. That was what I was feeling. So that's why I got in touch, because I knew that you would be able to pick up on things that I wasn't necessarily picking up on. Well, in fact, I didn't pick up on all of that. It was very important for me to have that knowledge, that expertise, a second pair of eyes, to be able to look at the situation and just go, okay, this, here we go, here, we'll sort this, we'll sort that.
Absolutely. So you asked me to have a look at your property and the area around your property. I didn't physically come to Wales. I did what I often do, which is to work remotely, which I know blows lots of people's minds, because how can energy work when you're not even there touching the walls or doing anything like that? But of course it does, because I do work with people all around the world. I've worked with people in Australia, Canada, and various parts of Europe, as well as the UK and Ireland. Sometimes I have the privilege of being able to go if it's within striking distance, but often I work remotely and it comes to exactly the same thing. So the purpose of doing the podcast is to interview people like you, Claire, who can actually share with people what this experience is actually like. So you contacted me, we arranged to do the clearing online, and the first thing I did was send you a questionnaire. Now, what was it like to receive that questionnaire?
I loved it. It explores the relationship between the person, the inquirent, and the property, the surrounds, the whole thing, which goes way deeper. I have had a clearing in the past and they didn't ask anything basically and just went, yeah, whiz bang pop, off we go. This actually explores so many much deeper levels. I was actually blown away by it, to be honest. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I deeply appreciated it because it brings all of the things that you may be aware of in a huge amount of things that you wouldn't necessarily attribute to what is going on, to the house, to how you are interacting and reacting and responding with the house. And not just the house, but the surrounds. So there's a lot of things that I just hadn't even thought about, which was brilliant to bring them into the forefront of my awareness, first and foremost, and then obviously to be able to pass that on to you.
Brilliant, because yes, other people have said that it's time for things to come up from the unconscious mind, or things that were sort of hovering around in your conscious awareness. But it's really bringing all of those things out around your relationship with your house, the previous owners, the neighbors, any conflicts that have gone on, really starting to establish a core sense of yourself in relationship with the house and anyone else who lives there, and any psychic activity that might be going on, any feelings that you have in different rooms. And it really starts to build a very, very substantial picture, which is then presented to me, which I absorb and I analyze and I spend time with before we do the actual clearing. So then we did a clearing for about 3 hours, I think, live. And so there's me here in Southampton and you there in Wales with your computer, your mobile phone at times when we had to go out. And the first place in my recollection that I was guided for us to go to was to go down the street, down the hill to the third house on the right. Now, I had no clue what the third house on the right was. I just knew that that's where we had to go. And it was a corner house. And
Yep.
you told me, well, I'll pass it over to you. What did you tell me about what had happened in this house?
Yeah, there's been a death. I think there's actually been a couple of deaths, but in the actual house, it's a very small house. It's very gorgeous. You started to get a huge amount of information through about the lady who was basically still there. It's fascinating. The fact that she called, well, both of us down the street to be able to do what she needed to do and be heard, be seen. I mean, she was a gorgeous lady, absolutely gorgeous lady. Certainly wasn't expecting that. I honestly, thought it would be about the property, not other properties, and how they or whoever was in the property, how that would affect here.
Mm.
Absolutely fascinating.
Mm.
So yeah, we talked to her for a while.
We did, and it was very interesting because, like with most of the earthbound souls that I've had the honor of communicating with and discovering and meeting through this work,
Mm.
she had a reason that she hadn't been able to move on after she had a fall down the stairs, which ended her earthly life. And that was because she had so many craft projects that she was in the middle of that she didn't want to leave them unfinished. So that was what was keeping her in that particular time warp. What was interesting was that Claire and I were able to talk to her and explain to her that it was okay for her to leave those projects and to validate the work that she did. There was a very extraordinary superpower she had, which was an eye to hand coordination superpower, which gave her this incredible skill to be creating this exquisite craft work of so many kinds. That was a beautiful thing to see that, to I'll be able to honor that in her and for her. So she was eventually able to move to the light when she was ready, and she'd been validated, and we cleared the house from some family stuff as well. And then this is where things get really, really intriguing. That having done all of that, Claire went round the corner, and immediately there on a lamppost, there was an arts and craft fair sign.
Mm.
For the weekend for Newport, which was fascinating, right? And then she went round the corner a little bit more, and the next building along from this lady's house was actually an local artisan's shop full of local artisans' products and gifts for sale. This is where you can't make this stuff up, because literally the external mirrors the internal, and that was obviously a real kind of artisan crafty corner, and all that energy, those external signs were literally physically there, and just confirming the inner work that we'd done there with that lady. And as you say, how fascinating for people to know listening to this podcast that may not be aware that even properties in the vicinity can be affecting your property. And also the fact you doing your property activates things in the area that also need dealing with. So it's not just dealing with your own property, you're dealing with the whole area and releasing it. So it'd be fascinating to know what happens now with that house. And then we had to go up the hill. And as we went up the hill, I saw the carts and the struggles of all the people coming home from work, the men particularly coming home from work, really, really struggling after hard days of labour. And that pain was in the street up that hill. So we had to release all of that. We went up to the church. And when we got to the church, suddenly my attention was taken to a very strange looking building on the opposite side from the church. It was like a community hall or a church hall or something like that. And when I zoned in, we discovered there had been a lot of meetings going on there, where there'd been a lot of conflict, argument, a lot of unhappiness, a lot of raging, and ostracization of people in the community who didn't fit in with everybody else. And there was conflict there between the Welsh and the English, and a lot of historical emotional turbulence and shouting and all sorts of things like that. So we cleared all of that. It was at the top of the street, and when we'd finished, we zoned in on the fact that there was a large white van sitting out literally outside this building, and on the side of this van was a big sign, KO, which said knock out carpets, knock out carpets. And there was a fist, a boxing glove fist on the side as the knockout, to symbolize the knockout of the carpets, these knockout carpets. So the knockout carpets were being fitted. So, yeah, which obviously reflected the conflict and the aggro that I'd picked up that had gone on in the hall. So again, that was a beautiful way in which external life was reflecting the inner work that we did there. Again, be fascinating to know what the energy feels like in that place now. So before we even got to your house, there we were dealing with a house that was at the bottom of the street, and then we had to deal with this building at the top of the street and the street itself. And then finally we were able to get to your front door. And when we got to your front door, that was really quite a shocking sight psychically,
Yeah, certainly was not expecting that. As soon as I've been going in and out of that front door for, goodness knows how many times, multiple times a day and everything. And there was a body on the step there, to the side of the door.
Yep. And I
Who
saw
knew?
a group of men had come up and had dumped this dead body. It was on someone's shoulder, and they dropped it off onto the right side of Claire's front door. And there was a whole story that unfolded with that and the men that were responsible and why they dumped it on the doorstep, because they felt they were meting out some sort of revenge there. And we had a quite complicated, meticulous type of intervention and mediation that we had to do there to help this group of men to understand what they'd done and get them to a place of remorse and wanting forgiveness, because they hadn't moved on just as much as the poor man who'd been finished off there. So we had to mediate an understanding between the men and help them understand the consequences of what they'd done. And it was quite big, wasn't it? And then eventually they were all able to move on once they'd been heard and they'd said what they needed to say and they'd understood consequences of their actions. And then you told me that your mum, when she was alive and had lived there, she had had a lot of interference from local men.
Yeah, it wasn't very pleasant. I was living abroad at the time and was actually very worried for her because they wouldn't leave her alone for quite a while. But it did eventually get sorted out.
So
Not fun.
no, not fun at all. So after we'd experienced communication and this freeing and releasing of souls at your front door, you went to open the front door, right?
And it was much easier to open. The door had been sticking, opening and closing for, I'm not sure how long, a long time. And it suddenly just went to be much easier to open and close. Still is. So yeah, it was immediate.
Amazing.
Mm.
Amazing. So no longer had a psychic body on your doorstep, and the door could open. Fantastic. So we went around your house, and certain areas were absolutely fine. And then there was a particular piece of work that we needed to do in the conservatory. There was this sense that it was disconnected from the rest of the house, that when it had been put up, the house had not been asked permission for this extra piece to be put on. And therefore, there was a feeling of disconnection, which is very interesting because I know that that's something that you felt, that somehow there was a slight disconnection from the rest of the house. And so some of the work we had to do there was to get the house to accept that part and to integrate it into the whole structure so that it could feel that it was connected and integrated and part of the whole and not this separate piece on the side. What was that experience like for you?
That was actually very moving. It was very experiential. The disconnect in the conservatory, that brought up a lot because that's where I'd been feeling disconnected from spirit, parts of myself that I know but couldn't access. Almost like amnesia, but it's not really amnesia. It was just I knew they were there. I just couldn't access them. Yeah, that was definitely impactful. Let's put it this way. And I could feel the shifts. I could feel the disconnect actually made sense. It was a bit of a light bulb moment because it was like, right, okay, yeah, I understand why I'm feeling like I had been feeling. Not being able to clear that was brilliant. It felt good. It was just lovely to be able to heal that up, be able to reconnect, be able to feel that as it was being worked on. Yeah.
Wonderful. And then we protected the house from the neighbors so that there was no energy leakage happening or seeping in from either side. So that was an important piece of work to do. Finally, then we brought in some really life enhancing, beautiful energies, and we started talking to the house and asking the house to really support you and your work and be there for you and step into that place of real support and championing of you and your work and moving into a much higher energy, because of course walls have energy, right? Most people don't necessarily think of it in that way. They don't think of their homes as supporting them, because we're always sort of looking after our homes, but actually our homes can look after us. They can expand, they can grow, and they can reflect back our own unique energetic identity. So we did that work as well. We brought some beautiful energies into your field, and then afterwards I checked in on you. We have a couple of aftercare calls, and this is the most exciting part for me, where I finally discover what you've noticed and what the changes are for you. So tell us, Claire, what did you notice, what did you feel, and what changed for you after we did this extraordinarily deep and powerful work together?
Yeah, a lot. My gifts and my abilities are back, which is great. I'm so happy about that. It's like being able to just tap in. I did some work with a client the other day, and every single piece of information came through so quickly, clearly, in full color as it used to be. My work is much easier, so I'm super happy about that. Clarity is back on, motivation, inspiration, you name it. It's all back. It's all back. That consistency is still there. It doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. It feels like it's back, anchored back in and here to stay, which is absolutely fabulous. So things have gone from strength to strength. It's like coming home. Home has to be that cozy place where you feel you can do whatever you want. You can be productive. You can relax. You can do whatever you want in your home in that sense. And this feels like that is possible. There were things tied into the energy of the house that were affecting this house. With all of that cleared, the house is now fully supporting me. It's a massive change. So the plans, the goals, the desires, the dreams, the visions, the mission that I've got is absolutely massive. And I know that I can get that done here in this house. I know that it will support me all the way through. I'm not going to say it'll be a doddle, because there will always be things that pop up and challenges in business anyway. But through those challenges, I know that this house will support me. It has my back. It literally has my back. And that's huge. I can feel that. I know that I don't have to worry about the energy here. I know that I can just go for it, get it done, and it'll be absolutely fine. It's like having a partner who supports you versus a partner who doesn't. Absolutely massive.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So this has been a kind of interesting experience for you, because to begin with, you couldn't quite see how the house was having an impact on you, or holding you back, or holding you to ransom, or whatever. And so we did this work together for around a month, and you started to see things differently in that time. So looking back on it now, what is it that you feel that you've learned through this experience, and what you're going to take away from it?
There's a lot. I will take responsibility for whatever it is that I need to take responsibility for, and we'll work with it. So I tried all sorts of different things, to looking at me, working with the inner work, working with anything that I could think of that was shown to me, to try and shift this. So it's been important to me to understand that, sure, I can absolutely take responsibility for things that I'm not doing, or things that I'm overlooking, or, avoiding, etc. And at the same time, explore the possibilities that there may be external influences that affect me or my environment.
Thank you so much, Claire. That's been it's been wonderful talking to you today and reflecting on the experiences that we had together doing this very important work. I am so thrilled that you have got your connection back and your gifts back. I can't wait to see how that's going to translate into greater things for your work and people coming to you for what you do. And I wish you well. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me today on the Problem Properties podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine, for everything, for your expertise and all the inputs before and afterwards. The aftercare is just as important as the actual clearing itself.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. And we will see
Pleasure.
you again next week with a new guest on the Problem Properties podcast. But for me, your host, Catherine Veer, is goodbye for now.